Omran Daknish was the victim of the latest fighting for control of the city of Aleppo, which has intensified as government forces try to regain control of districts lost to rebel forces. Well, the Assad regime, backed by Russia and Iran, has continued bombarding the city, and this boy was retrieved from one of the buildings hit. Well, the pictures were met with outrage and grief around the world. He's just one of thousands of children, of course, suffering as the violence escalates. Yesterday on my Twitter feed, that was virtually all I saw was his sad face. And if you see the whole video still, it's just so painful to watch. Well, let's speak to Hyde, who's a Syrian based here in London with family in the regime-held area of Aleppo. Razan Safour, whose mother is from Aleppo, and she also has family who are currently living in the city, and we can speak to them now. Those images are just absolutely heartbreaking, aren't they? But of course, that's one child in a city where so many children are being targeted. It's hard for anyone to look at that, but is it harder for you because you've got that link to Aleppo?
Yeah, for sure, especially that my family is still there. I just want to correct that. I have only one family member who lives in areas controlled by the regime, while the rest of them, they live in areas controlled by opposition groups. On daily basis, I give them like calls and to see how they're doing, and I don't know whether the next call they will still be okay or not. It's just surreal what's going on there, and no one is trying to do enough in order to change that.
Is there much difference in conditions between the rebel-held areas and the government-controlled areas?
Big time. The problem is that the Syrian regime is using barrel bombs and different kind of indiscriminate weapons. And the Russians, who started bombarding also last September, they have been intensifying their bombardment strikes as well. So in my town, in my hometown, which is called Atarib, around 30 kilometers from Aleppo, for more than 3 weeks now, you have between 4 and 30 airstrikes a day. And most of those airstrikes, or all of them actually, are hitting civilian areas. They're hitting markets, hospitals, schools, and houses. So it is completely different when you live in areas controlled by the opposition, because the opposition, they don't have airstrikes. So the damages that are done by the mortar shelling is much less than the damages done by the airstrikes.
So when you talk to your family in Aleppo, is there any sense of a normal life? Do people feel safe to leave their homes, go out on the streets?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's quite ironic because on one hand, there's no sense of normal life that we understand it, of going out, you know, going to university, going to school, buying your daily groceries. But for them, this life has become normal. I think we've seen that exemplified in the image of Omran Daknish, the boy. I mean, he wasn't even crying; he was just sitting there, expressionless. And the boy, his age is the age of the Syria war. He's 5 years old, and that's when the Syrian war started. It just shows how this life has become very normal. Has become very normal for people. People expect to die any second. I mean, actually, I was speaking to my aunt just a few days ago. We speak to her every single day, primarily on WhatsApp. We hadn't heard from her for about 3 days on Wednesday, so we hadn't heard from her since I think Sunday. And then on Wednesday we heard back from her, and she told us that for the third time this year her flat was bombed by a barrel bomb filled with chlorine. She very almost died, but because this has become their daily life, she's very well equipped with survival techniques. The people, her neighbours who live in the flat underneath her died, and the people above, some of them died and some of them are in critical conditions in makeshift hospitals. She was suffocating. She's a 65-year-old woman who lives by herself. She was suffocating from the chlorine gas, but she managed to sort of like hide herself and cover her face with damp cloth for about 2 hours until the Syrian civil defense came over and were able to extract her out of the rubbles. Now she's homeless. I mean, thank God she's got friends, but she can stay. You know, she can stay around their houses. But yeah, I mean, that's their daily life. So I mean, even when she was telling us this, it was sort of like, I'm in shock. I'm half desensitized. I can't cry because I hear this on a daily basis almost. But not that I'm in shock, and she's telling us, and she's almost laughing, like, yeah, I almost got killed again.
Does she have access to food? I mean, you say she's effectively homeless, friends are obviously supporting her. How does she get access to food, medicines?
Yeah, so there's also a huge shortage, especially knowing that Aleppo is under siege right now. Well, the siege is half broken, but it's still generally all of Syria it's very difficult to get access to medical aid and to get access to food. She gets food because charities are able to come in, and we heard about the humanitarian corridor. No, I mean, I'm not sure about Hyde, but I'm very sceptical about that, especially since, I mean, Russia being involved in that. Russia agreed to that the same day they bombed 9 hospitals, and Russia right now, alongside the regime, are the biggest killers of the Syrian people. And so it's all very ironic, but I mean they do get food. Obviously it's not as accessible, but food is there. I mean, I think the main concern now is just to stop the murder once and for all. That's the main concern for Syrians right now, not as much as, I mean, they're demanding for a no-fly zone, they're demanding for a stop to the killing, more than they're demanding food.
There is, of course, Russia has said yesterday that it would support the idea of a 48-hour ceasefire. We've heard these kind of conversations before. Do you have faith in that?
Definitely not, because as Razan just said, they are the ones who are targeting civilians, and they're the ones who are targeting hospitals and schools. And they just say that to say that we are doing something about it. But the truth is that they are the ones who are killing those people, and they're the ones who are not allowing food to enter those areas. Even as Razan mentioned, like the siege was broken almost a week ago or more than that. But till now, the regime and the Russians are targeting this bit of land, so they don't allow people to leave and they don't allow aid in. So they are the ones who are stopping that from taking place, and they are just giving people false promises to say that we're acting upon it.
And as you speak to your respective families inside Aleppo, do they want to leave? And if they do, is there any realistic prospect they will be able to?
I think it's quite difficult at this point to leave from Aleppo because it's not physically possible. But the question is to leave where?
Because they don't trust the humanitarian corridors?
For sure not, because no one did, and the corridors didn't even exist. That's one thing. I spoke to a friend there, and he told me that at least in my house, I know that I can die peacefully with my family. But why would I go to a designated area to be killed by those who are killing me everywhere I go? So for sure they don't trust them. But the other thing is that, okay, you want to leave out of Aleppo to go where? Turkey closed the borders. You cannot leave Syria. To Lebanon, it's almost impossible. To Jordan, they closed the border as well. So you have no way out of Syria. And as long as you're in Syria, it is the same situation. You go outside of Aleppo to rural Aleppo, they are bombarding those areas as well. Like my hometown, 30 airstrikes a day. So there's no safe place to go to. And the discussion is, we need to provide those people with safe areas. Whether those safe areas are inside Syria or outside Syria, that's the bottom line. Those people need protection, and we should provide them with that protection.
Yeah, I think there's also another aspect which isn't discussed as much. It's that these people are home. This is their home country. You know, they don't want to leave Syria. They want to live in Syria. They want to rebuild Syria. They want, I mean, we tend to forget, I mean, the narrative is usually skewed. We tend to forget how this all started off. It started off 5 years ago with a revolution where people rose up asking for freedom. So people want to stay in their country. They want to rebuild their country. They don't want to be forced out of it, and for the bombing and the bombardment to remain there, and for them not to be able to live a prosperous life in the place where their grandparents lived in. You know, so we tend to forget about that home sentiment, that national sentiment. We can't just take people, uproot them from their home and just send them to another place. I mean, exactly. They're gonna be living isolated. I mean, whether internally or externally, for the rest of their lives. And
also, there is another issue, which is solidarity. That solidarity sense. Because when I speak to my parents and I tell them, we should go, you should leave the town, and they say we can afford to leave the town, but other people cannot. So we are there with those people, and we will suffer whatever they suffer. So this kind of solidarity as well, because it's their house, and those people are their neighbors and their friends. They're not going to leave them there alone, because leaving that place doesn't change the fact that those people will die maybe tomorrow, maybe today, maybe the day after.
That their home is being destroyed and their country is being destroyed.
Thank you both for coming in and sharing your stories with us. Still to come,